Welcome to the Coffin Table podcast, where we breathe new life into films thought dead and buried. I'm fresh-eyed film fan Anita Dirtnap.
And I am film historian, horror host, and undead aficionado, so Cophagus. I've dug up the best, the worst, and the most bizarre that Hollywood has to offer. So grab enough coffee to wake the dead.
This
This
is
is
the
the
Coffin Table
Coffin Table
podcast.
podcast. So, we've delved through the vault. This is I've actually sort of gotten a good one for us to start the season right. Have you ever seen any of the Universal horror films, Anita?
I've dabbled in a couple of them.
A couple. Okay,
A couple.
okay. Well, then are you more of a 1930s fan or a 1940s fan?
See, now it depends on which one. Because I grew up with, I think it was the original Frankenstein.
Okay.
Yeah, I had that on VHS. I would watch that religiously. I would go through the motions of rewinding it, watching it, forgetting to rewind it after I watched it, and then when I go to watch it again, having to rewind it. Very, very fond childhood memory there.
Okay. No. I actually get you on that. I still own my copy of Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman on VHS. In fact, I think it's staring at me in its VHS sleeve right now. So there you go. That's all right because I've thrown you a curveball. We're going into the 1950s. This is the Universal classic, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Now, have you, prior to us watching this film, have you ever seen this film before?
Never seen it prior to us watching it. I've heard a lot about it.
Okay. Well, then I'll ask right off the bat. Let's go ahead and cut to the chase. Did it live up to the hype?
I think so. I really think so. With this movie in particular, you can definitely see where a lot of inspiration for later movies as the years went on came from. And it's just a nice story. It's a good story. And it's told in a captivating way.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that, and it's very multi-textured. That's something that you can't say for a lot of horror films, especially the early era horror films. And don't get me wrong, I love them to death, but I also kind of love the one-note approach that a lot of these films do. For example, Dracula. A lot to contextualize. It's just, hey, big creepy guy has a cape, drinks your blood. Frankenstein does have a little bit more subtlety to it, sure. Wolfman has a little bit more subtlety to it, sure. The Mummy, not so much. He's an undead fiend who is deciding that he's going to go after the reincarnation of his old girlfriend. Okay, cool. Yeah, give me that. That's awesome. But with the creature, there's some romantic subtext. There's some pollution allegory. There's your traditional freak of the week style monster. There's just there's a lot going on with this. I find
There definitely is, and I like those subtle undertones that they managed to put in there. You know, like you're going into this movie and you're thinking, well, obviously the creature's going to be the bad guy, right? Like,
of course, that's how it goes.
Yeah, as all of the not even just Universal and Hammer, but other movies of the like. You go into these movies and you think, oh, right off the bat who the bad guy is, and it's not that case in this one. It throws you a complete curveball with that, which I find is interesting. and you rarely see it where the supposed bad guy is not the bad guy.
Yeah, no. That's actually exactly right. Um, now this movie uh it has a lot of firsts. There's a lot of firsts going on in this film. This is the first underwater footage done for a horror film. Like there are other films that have underwater footage, but this was the first one that ever had it done specifically for a horror film. Which now that I've said that out loud, would you even consider this movie a horror, or would you picture this more as like an action adventure,
I can definitely
or maybe a
see
sci-fi adventure?
I can definitely see where the horror aspects of it come in. I wouldn't classify this as a horror movie. Just because the different subtexts within it and the general overall theme of it, it doesn't really scream horror movie to me. Now, that being said, this is coming from somebody who is way into the 2024s, at this point in time. Back then, I can definitely see people being terrified to go into the water after watching this movie.
It's kind of ironic. 2024, and this film came out in 1954. So,
Hey,
there you go. Yeah. Actually, one of the last surviving members of the cast and crew passed away just at the beginning of 2024. Rico Browning. He was actually the guy who played the creature during the underwater segments. So he was actually the guy who does the infamous, underwater backstroke with Julie Adams up above him. That was him, and he passed away February of 2024. So
he must have been up there in age because, like, that he wasn't, what, an adult when he filmed this movie? So he must have been up there in age by the
yeah,
time he passed.
yeah, no, yeah, he was. He was. Oh shoot, how old was he? He was 92, 93, something of that nature, and he was still getting fan mail about this movie.
Oh,
There was
wow.
actually, yeah, no, yeah, there was a push about 2 years ago. I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, amongst all the horror hosts who were trying to get together and go, hey, Rico Browning, he's not feeling too hot, but he still loves to get the fan mail. If you could write him a letter, let him know he would love to read it, etc. And sure enough, people would pour in with letters and I hope you get to feeling better, etc. And they said that it helped. Obviously, at 93, it's not going to help much, but the doctors and nursing staff, etc., said that the letters actually did help. At the very least, make him feel better.
Well, that's
So
nice. That's heartwarming,
yeah.
actually. To think that a movie that was done in the 50s still has such a huge rapport nowadays, Like that
Hmm.
that is a hard thing to accomplish. So kudos to that.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
So
Uh,
so I
oh,
do
so no, sorry, go ahead.
I do have to say, when it comes to black and white movies, there's this little tick that I have, and it's nothing that like against the movie or anything like that. It's more of I am so interested to know what these would have been like in color, because obviously back then with black and white movies, they would have to kind of play around with the colors. If you wanted to make it seem like the leading lady was wearing red lipstick. Well, actually, it was green lipstick because it showed up better on the black and white, and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
So I have to ask: do you know what the creature looks like in color?
I do actually. Now, uh, part of this is because of the same way everyone else does, but part of it is also because I've actually gotten a chance to see a recreation of the original suit. This is there's a recreation of the suit in existence that is foam rubber, not latex, but foam rubber, and it is colored up the exact same way it was on film, etc., to the point where the cast and crew, when they saw the recreation of it, they thought it actually was the real suit from the movie.
That's insane.
And so, right. So obviously, it's very well done. It's in some cases they are using the original molds, etc. So I got to see the original paint job.
Now, was this in person or was this a photo that you saw?
Both. I saw the photo first, and then I got to see it in person.
Oh, how cool!
Yeah, it was actually in Florida. I went down to Florida for a while. This was about 10 years ago or so, maybe longer. No, it was longer. It was longer. It was longer than that. But anyway, I got to go to Florida, and they had this suit. It was on loan from the and so I got to see it, and it is. If you ever look at the movie posters, he's this bright, like almost lime green color with some more traditional green on the edges of the fins and scale patterns with these bright ruby red lips. And that's pretty much universally how you see him in the poster art.
Yeah.
And that's what I actually thought he looked like. But that's actually not the case. It was toned down significantly. Like there's a little bit of red in the lips, just a little bit, but not a lot. It was predominantly more yellows and grays and greens. There's actually substantially more gray to him than there is to green. I'd almost describe it more of a moss green. If I had to pick a color, I'd say it's more like a mossy green than it is like a fish green. Like you see like if you see a green fish, you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. No, think paler. It's more like the colors have been muted almost.
How interesting. So this guy really blended in with the scenery when they were filming this.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And I thought that they did a lot of filming on a pre-built set, as in like, hey, let's rent out a swimming pool, fill it up with water and go and film that way. And that's actually not what happened. They actually found a freshwater spring and filmed there. So this is actually being filmed predominantly on location in a freshwater spring here in the U.S.
And whereabouts was that they filmed it?
Tallahassee area. The Tallahassee. I want to say. Oh shoot! You're gonna make me think of it too now. Aren't you?
Yeah.
It starts with a W. It's a Walla Walu Waka.
Hakuna Matata.
Right, no, it's Wakulla. Wakulla, I believe.
Okay.
But that is in Florida, which is one of the reasons why I got to see the suit, just because I'm, in Florida, I was in the area and they had this thing on loan. So that was that.
That's so cool. It's interesting because obviously, again, like, you hear about, well, let's say the Addams Family, it was supposed to be this dark and dreary house, but it was actually pink. It's
like Pepto-Bismol's pink too.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Yeah.
It's interesting to know that they didn't change the colors of what you would assume this creature would look like. You would assume he has the grays and the yellows and the gray and the greens, So the fact that they were able to keep it that way and have him blend in more, I would love to have been able to talk to the people who were in the movie and be like, what was it like? Like you're filming this movie, it's fake, but you don't see where the creature is because he blends in with all the scenery.
Yeah, no, exactly. Actually, Rico Browning himself would say that no, there were times where because I had to. He said, now this is a paraphrased quote, but he said that originally they're going to have him with a diver's mask on, but it pushed the pace too far out. You could clearly tell that they were two separate creatures. So okay, fine, and they went and decided to go with swimmer's goggles, and they did that for all of one shoot, and they scrapped the footage because water got in the goggles, and because of how the headpiece had to get on him. If water got in to the goggles, he couldn't get the water out,
Oh gosh.
so he was just stuck with it. And so he elected to just go without any sort of swim mask. Period.
So how did he breathe underwater?
And
Because those were extensive scenes down there.
yeah, no, well, I mean, he didn't have like a scuba tank. You know, you
Yeah.
can tell by the way the creature is formed. There's no scuba tank under him. That's bareback, etc. And so what it is that they would go with him along the path that they wanted the creature to go, and ever so often they would have a hose in these key spots with air that would pump, and he would come up to one and then he'd move on. And he would have to, and so like the scenes where he's just kind of vegging amongst the kelp and watching the fish swim past, uh, there were instances where he'd have to be down there for 4 minutes at a time before having to get a puff of air.
God,
Um,
I can't even hold my
there are
breath for
other
2 minutes.
right? Well, and in that same note, there are times where if he had to move real quick, he could hold it maybe for about 2 minutes. So he would stay down there for a while. There are times where he would stay down there for more or less all day. Um, and the suit itself was ostensibly a leotard that they glued. They would, and this happened every day. Every day, they would glue. This leotard that they would glue this foam rubber uh, that was pre-molded to him. So like he would sit in the suit, or he would get into like this big mold so that they could get his dimensions proper. They would make the stuff so it would be skin tight to him. And
Mm.
he had to watch his weight. He couldn't lose too much weight, and he couldn't gain too much weight. And because otherwise it wouldn't fit properly. And so you want to talk about having some real discipline. That's real discipline. Boy, howdy. Um, but they would have this leotard on him and they would glue this foam rubber on, and it would take about 3 hours to put on, and then he would be in this suit, well, ostensibly all day until it was time to get out of it, and then they would strip him out of it, and that would take another 3 hours to take everything off. And Rico would also say that there was a couple of times where the glue that they were using was so abrasive that it would actually leak through the leotard and get on his skin.
Oh no.
He said that he actually had a scar on his chest, somewhere on his chest, where it actually leaked through and burn, and actually did, in fact, give him a bit of a bit of a contact burn,
Oh my
or a
goodness.
chemical burn from it. But yeah, he goes. That's where the creature got me. That's where the gill man got me.
And what a story that would be to tell around the Christmas table, eh? Like you're telling your grandkids or your grandkids that you watch this movie and this is the creature that left me the scar, kind of thing.
Yeah,
What a legacy
yeah,
to
and
leave
it's
behind.
kind of nuts. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Now,
but yeah. So we talked a little bit about that, sure. But like, oh man, the stories that I would love to be a fly on that one.
oh, I
Oh,
know. Now, obviously there's a lot of underwater scenes, but there's also a lot of above water scenes. Was it all the same actor for the Gill Man, or did they have multiple people working on this? Like, what was the process here?
okay. Okay, so what it is that there was a dude, and that's how I'm going to refer to him. His name is Dude. No, I'm kidding. There was Rico Browning, who played the creature for the underwater sequences. Um, and then there was Ben Chapman, who played him um, for the land sequences. And Ben Chapman was like 6'3" or so. And they were originally they wanted him. They were looking for a guy who was like 6'3" and 300 pounds, kind of like a big beefy dude.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like ostensibly he was just a beanpole. But it worked to their advantage because it made the creature seem faster. Because if you watch the movie, the creature is, the Gilman himself is booking through that water, and he is actually out swimming the humans.
Oh yeah, he can move.
Yeah, very, very well. Well, Rico and Ben are actually two different heights. They're two completely different builds, in fact. And so you had Ben Chapman, who would be the land creature, standing at, I think after they put everything on, he was about 6'5".
Okay.
So just towering over everyone. And then you had Rico, who was closer to 5'8". And so there's actually quite a big difference in their heights. And so allegedly, and I have never been able to really actually go, oh, that's him. But allegedly, the way you can tell who it is playing the creature is the chest piece, specifically the chest piece. Sometimes the mask is a little bit different because Ben Chapman has more of an oval head, whereas Rico had more of a rounder head. And there's a couple of scenes where the creature looks, I can't say off, but he doesn't quite. It looks like whenever you step out of the shower and your hair's wet and it's like stuck to your face and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, this is a nice look on it. And then you take the hairdryer to it and suddenly, and your head balloons 5 sizes.
Yeah.
Just because of all the floof. Imagine that, but in a monster sense. Like he looks like an average proportional thing, and then he comes out of the water, and suddenly it looks like his head's kind of shrunk for a second. And so that's one. There's like one scene that happens, and the rest of the time it's actually you can't tell. Mm-hmm. But the other way to tell is with the chest piece. And if you ever get a good look at the creature's design, there are in the pectoral region. There are the two pectorals, and then there's this center third piece that's there. And what they did for Rico is that they using the same technique. They actually removed that middle piece so that they would actually push the chest piece together a little bit. Okay. And that is actually how you're supposed to be able to tell the difference. On who is specifically the chess piece, but he's always moving, and I'll be honest with you. Every time I watch the movie, I wind up getting sucked into the movie, and I forget to look. Like I keep going, oh man, I'm gonna do it this time. I'm gonna find him. Which one are you? There's Ben. Oh, there's Rico. Which one? And then by the time Julie Adams is swimming on the surface, I have been sucked into the movie and I forget to look.
Well, and it does that too. It sucks you right in. Like, you don't know what you're setting up for when you first watch this movie. Like, they start by digging up this fossil of a webbed hand, which they're trying to figure out what it is, what it's supposed to be attached to, and they throw some options out there. But obviously, it's not like anything that really would have been known at that time. And then then we see the creature coming out and everything, and so like they kind of throw you into the deep end right away. Like they give you maybe, I don't know, 10-15 minutes of them going, oh hey, what's this, we should explore this, and then suddenly there's death and destruction on the screen. So they throw you right in real quick, and I think that really works for it.
No, I agree too. They give you just enough time to mull over the idea that they're spinning, and then they said, okay, if you haven't bought that idea by now, you're not going to, so we're going to jump in. Bye.
Yeah. And they do it in such a way that's like, you instantly know that this isn't going to go the way that most monster movies do. You know, with monster movies, you have a definitive bad guy versus good guy dynamic, and you have with this too. But the roles are kind of reversed.
Yeah. In fact, so okay, so the story goes that the this movie came about from a supposedly real story about these half man, half fish creatures that would live in the Amazon River called the uh, Yucaruna, I believe. I don't know. I'm not South American. I can't pronounce it properly. But the point of it is that there was supposedly like a mermaid, but a little bit more a little bit more violent and a little bit more male dominated, whereas mermaids are typically more female dominated.
Mm-hmm.
And so they sat on this story, they sat on the idea for this, and went, I don't know, maybe we could do this. And the um, the idea got tossed around a little bit more, and they said, well, why don't we combine this with, if the monster is male, why don't we do like kind of like a Beauty and the Beast kind of thing? And they lean into that a little bit, and they take elements of that, and then obviously the Lost World, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World came into play with this area that's untouched by human hands and hasn't been for a millennia.
Yeah.
And so a little bit of that, and they kind of stirred it all together, and it was just enough of each one that it concocted this idea. And so the Gill Man has some King Kong-esque overtones where it's, was beauty killed the beast type of situation, but also has the very much the Beauty and the Beast allegory of our villain is actually the human.
Which you don't
Like,
really expect in a movie like this.
Yeah. Like, if you can call him the villain, then he is definitely the villain. But there is his name is character's name is Mark Williams. They call him Mark all the time because they're all supposed to be friends.
Mm-hmm.
But Dr. Mark Williams, and he is the blonde-haired, tall, athletic guy who is, hey, I'm going to do this and that and the other thing, and he's very proactive, etc. And he winds up getting them into more trouble than he gets them out of trouble.
And they make a good point in the movie itself, too. Like, the leading actress, Julia, she even states, if you leave it alone, it'll leave us alone.
Yep. And he won't leave it alone. And ultimately it does cost him his life. I know that's technically a spoiler, but if I'm considering him the villain, we all know how the story goes in this case. The villains, especially in these early movies, always die.
Well, not only that, but I mean, like, it's been how long since the movie came out? I think a spoiler's fine.
Fair. I'll give it to you.
Once you pass the 20-year mark, if you haven't seen it already, I mean.
Kind of. I mean, I get it. I do. Our other doctor friend is Dr. David Reed, and he's played by Richard Carlson. Carlson. It's an L. There's an L in there. And he was actually in a few other movies that the director had made. Jack Arnold is the director of this film. He did It Came from Outer Space. He did The Creature in the Black Lagoon, and he's most famous for The Incredible Shrinking Man, which is another dynamite movie. It's so good. But he's actually the one who directed these. And sorry, I almost sneezed there for a second.
Through the power of editing, we can remove it.
Right, there you go. Hey. Yeah, you know what? Keep it in. They need to know that I sneeze sometimes. I'm allergic to my own BS. Where was
I
I?
can
Oh
believe
yeah,
it.
yeah. No, no, no. Hey, it is what it is. But uh, he plays our leading man, and he's actually really a compelling hero in the sense that he's a scientist. He's trying to understand, but he, as soon as he gets the idea of, okay, we've overstepped our bounds, we need to duck out. Then, as soon as that happens, he's 100% in for it. He's like, yes, no, 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 no. No matter what happens, get us out now. We can come back later. Now that we know what's going on, and we can prep for it properly. And so I really enjoyed him as a hero for that, if nothing else. Like he was very proactive in let's get out before it gets bad, and then come back.
Yeah,
And it was
he definitely had a head on his shoulders, and
yeah, and it
it led to a lot of
unfortunately it was
clashes.
Mark who kept screwing up. Yeah, no, no, agreed, agreed. Julie Adams, she plays our leading lady,
Okay.
and native Arkansan. Actually, she actually was born in Malvern, Arkansas, which is about 30 minutes from where I live. And there was a movie theater actually. I think COVID finally shut them down. But there was a movie theater that every year on her birthday they would show The Creature from the Black Lagoon there, and I thought that was always really cool. So I've seen this movie quite a few times just for that, if nothing else.
Well, yeah, I would too. Like if they're playing it every year like that, what a great anniversary way to celebrate such a good movie. You know?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So fun, so good. But yeah. So plot wise, we have there's another fella. He's an older gentleman named uh, Dr. Carl. Carl something or another. Anyway, he's very obviously our South American doctor character. Like he's a scientist. He's a paleontologist specifically. Um, and he's actually one of our very first characters we see on the screen. He's the one who finds the fossil and winds up staying with us the rest of the film. And so we have all four of them plus the crew of the ship, including a wonderful captain. The
He
captain
was.
of this boat,
Whew.
he was a move.
I'll tell you what though, he had a
uh,
creepy ass smile.
yes, now unfortunately, yes, he did. But yeah, Lucas was great. He's been in a few films. He's a bit of a character actor in amongst his circles. So uh, yeah, they pretty much made out our entire cast. It's a very very small cast. It gave me um, it gave me a lot of like, ooh, wow, anybody can make a movie kind of vibes. And I say that not disparagingly, but if you think about like a big budget movie, like what The Creature was, like Creature of Black Lagoon was, you think of a cast that has just like dozens and hundreds of extras and like all these superfluous characters, and this had like almost nobody. Like once they entered the lagoon, it was just them and never becomes anyone else.
Which, in my opinion, I think is something that needs to be used more. Because you get horror movies and creature features and things like that where they have an extensive cast and they don't need it, you know? Have a group focused solely on that group and just have fun with it. You know, you don't need these 20 plus people when you can get away with 5. You know, like it takes away from the shining icons that the actors and actresses that are supposed to be the main characters, it takes away from them.
Yep.
It takes away from their light. And I think, having it where it's just a small group, trapped with no escape, no way to call for help, that adds to the tension. That adds to the fear factor. You know, it adds more flavor to it. Give me more of that.
Yeah, no, I can agree. I can 100% agree. No, it's. I think that if done properly, that style of cost cutting by reducing your cast can be so effective. Like Dracula, I feel like Dracula needs to have a bigger cast because it's a little bit more of a mean. Frankenstein, I feel like to really get the horror vibe of this thing is out, this monster is out and roaming the countryside, you kind of need a bigger cast. Um, Invisible Man doesn't necessarily have to. I could see an Invisible Man film be done with a very small cast and still be terrifying because then you're basically telling a ghost story, and ghost stories are always better if it's a small cast. A Wolfman movie, same story, but honestly, a Wolfman movie can go either way. It can go really, really creepy if it's small cast. It can be really, really freaky if it's a big cast. And Creature, the Gilman movies specifically, which you haven't seen the other two yet, but and that's the other three, or I'm sorry, the three in total, they actually give us all three types of films. They give us the small cast, they give us the big cast, and then they give us the halfway cast, where we have a lot of superfluous characters, but they don't stay on screen long enough for us to care about. Then there's some that is like, oh, and a cast of hundreds, and then there's the very intimate, kind of casting. So like the Gilman films specifically actually do run the full Monty of what we're talking about. And as we move on to the other films, which we'll watch the sequel at the end of this year, which will be Revenge of the Creature. But you'll see exactly what I'm talking about whenever I say that you can actually... Gilman is one of those few monsters that you can have it either way and it still be effective.
And yeah, I mean, obviously there's movies out there where bigger casts work for it more, they're better, so on and so forth. I just think with certain things, like, if... Take, for example, The Thing or Alien, not a very big cast, but they were also, stuck with no communication to the outside world type of deal. I think once you bring in those other characters with such a prospect that you're out here alone, it takes away from it. But once you get, like, say, like you said, the Wolfman, like, it could go either way with that, bigger cast could be just as well as smaller cast, I just think that once you add in you're stuck here with no way to call for help, that's when you need to keep the cast small.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you think that might be why this film feels so different from the other Universal movies?
I think so, honestly, because obviously with, like, again, bringing up Frankenstein here, he has he ends up getting a whole village after him. You have certain intimate characters where you know them better than everyone else. Like, you have Frankenstein, the doctor, you have the monster, you have the little girl that ultimately met her untimely demise, things like that. So you have key characters that bring in certain factors. And then you also have the village, the angry mob coming after the monster and everything like that. So I think, yeah, it definitely lends a different tone to the monster movie era that it was.
Yeah, because, I mean, like you said, Frankenstein. Frankenstein's a science fiction film. It's a science fiction horror. Okay, deals in science. Granted, the science is a little loose, but it still deals in science. Okay? Creature in the Black Lagoon. Same story. It deals in science. It's a very loose science, but it still deals in science. And then you have, Frankenstein deals, even though it deals in science, you feel it is more of a supernatural film because it's about reanimating corpses and stuff like that. Okay, sure, fine.
Yeah,
Dracula, outright occultish, nightmare fuel. Wolfman, it's a curse. Invisible Man, oh, hey, we're going back to science. And it's questionable science. Still kind of, at the very least, kind of Victorian-ish. And so, like, yeah, you're kind of forget what time period it's in. So, you could do it that way. But then you go back to the creature and it's, no, this was very clearly, quote unquote, modern day. But
Yeah.
honestly, even by today's standards, I could see this movie. The only thing it would need is a cell phone and somebody going, hey, I'm trying to get up. Oh, man, the Lagoon doesn't have any service. We're stuck out here. And it would not have changed a single thing about the movie.
Nope, it would have remained the same. You could remake this film. I hope they don't, but you could remake this film, and it would, like, as long as you keep the key factors of small cast, stuck with no way out, no way to contact people, good costume makeup for the creature, stir it all together, and voila, like. Now, granted, with modern day, you can bet that CGI would be used, at least in some sequences, which I don't think is needed for a movie like this. I think if you just stick to the practical, keep the set small, keep the cast small, you can have a fairly good budget movie that doesn't require a lot of tinkering with.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of special effects, because there's actually not a lot of special effects in this movie at all. It's all in camera type of things. But like, what was a scene that really stuck out in your mind, whether it be special effect or practical, or maybe it didn't even have anything to do with the Gill Man whatsoever. Maybe it's something to do with the principal cast. Like, what was a scene that really stuck out in your head and made you go, "Oh wow, I'm going to remember this scene when I think of this movie"?
This is okay. So the one scene that just came to mind is actually one scene that you said freaked you out when you first watch it. Is when the creature comes out from the water at the very end of the movie. There, the reason why it sticks out is because you clearly see the hero walk across the same body of water, like it was like maybe ankle deep, and then the creature just comes up from the water like it was deeper than that. That's gonna stick with me for the rest of my life. It doesn't take away from the movie. It's just like, funny.
Like, no, I agree, and I think that's why it freaked me out the first time I watched it, because I saw the same thing you did, and then all of a sudden he just, and all I can think of is that you just stepped on this guy.
Yeah,
that's why he's coming after you.
He was content to just hide there and wait for you to go away, but no, you just stepped on his back, like.
Swinging and swoogity. Like, coming for the booty. No, yeah, I have to agree. That was a good one.
It doesn't even take away from the movie. Like, it's nothing bad against the movie. It's just funny that, like, this guy walks across it like there's nothing there, and then all of a sudden the Gill Man just coming up like, oh, here I come.
Yep. Gosh, there's so many good scenes in this one. I'll be honest with you, I can't think of one that I prefer over the other.
Another good one,
out of all the scenes.
Another good one is when they're shooting. Kay is the heroine's name in the movie. When they're shooting her from underneath in the water, and she's swimming in the lagoon there. And I remember thinking, I see it. I see where the inspiration for Jaws came from now. Like this is definitely. You add the music and suddenly it's a shark there. It's.
Yeah, no. It's and only 25 years later.
Yeah,
and it's dun 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 dun, and instead of grabbing her and pulling her under, he's playing with her foot.
Yeah,
he's trying to grab at her foot.
He's curious.
It's so playful, and it's kind of creepy, but. Because we've all been swimming and then felt the seaweed tickle at the bottom of our foot, going, "What the heck is that?"
And then you yell, whatever. "I'm gonna die!" and you rush out of the out of the water.
I've seen this movie. I know what happens next. Oh gosh, yeah, yeah. No, that was a good one too.
Mm-hmm. This movie is full of good shots, just cinematic. Beautiful, like masterfully done shooting of the camera. They took their time. They knew what they were doing. They would, they obviously took a lot of care and consideration into what to film, where to film it, how to film it, kind of thing. And the fact that this was not a set, this was a actual place. They were actually in a lagoon in Florida, like that, just mind-blowing. The fact that they were able to do all these cinematic shots like that, and it wasn't even in a stage.
And the water is so clear. It's called a black lagoon, and it's crystal clear.
Yeah.
Crystal clear.
That's amazing. You could never, ever hope to achieve something like that ever again. Because, like,
oh yeah, no, it's great.
Nowadays, with like pollution and shit like that, most of the waters you see are mucky. You'll be lucky if you find something that's crystal clear like this was. And the fact that it's crystal clear, it's black and white, and you can still see everything clearly. Amazing.
Have you ever seen any of the old Tarzan movies?
No.
Like the old, I'm talking Johnny Weissmuller era.
No.
Okay. Well, the reason why I ask is because specifically the MGM era, the first 5 films of the 12 films in total, they did the first film in a pool, which is what I thought this movie was done in, was done in a pool. And then the other films, they actually all have these underwater sequences. There's in Tarzan and his mate, I believe. There's this, or maybe it's part 3. Maybe it's Tarzan and anyway. There's a couple of scenes where they're underwater, and they have this nice little underwater dance, swimming sequence and whatnot. And I found out later that those later films, not the first one, but the ones after that, they would shoot both in the original tank, in the original pool, and in Wakalua Springs as well. So they actually shot at both locations, and I was not aware of this. I actually thought it was all on all here, and then the creature was all here, like they found this place. And afterwards, they actually shot both in both places, and I think that's so cool to me because I'm a huge fan of the original Tarzan films. So for me to go, oh, no wonder it looks so familiar to me. Like there's not a single shot that is reused from Tarzan that is reused into the Creature from Black Lagoon. There's nothing like that, but it's really cool for me to go, oh wow, this. Oh, that's so neat. Just as a nice little ha-ha moment, to kind of connect the two inside my brain.
Yeah.
So I thought that was it's just nifty. It's just nifty. It's a little bit of a tangent, yes, but it's something.
Hey, you know what? If this podcast doesn't allow tangents, what's the point?
This is true. I endorse tangents.
Right? They're nice. They're fun. You learn a lot, or you zone out. It's a 50-50 coin toss to what it's going to be. Okay, so that all being said, I brought up remaking the movie. If they ever did consider remake the movie, how would you feel about that? Knowing of how much of a classic it is and how well it actually stands up compared to a lot of other movies that are considered classics, how would you feel about a remake?
Well, Guillermo del Toro, you love him or hate him, said that Shape of Water was supposed to be the film where the creature finally gets the girl. And honestly, I could see Shape of Water be a good substitute for a part 4 to the film franchise. If they did a straight-up remake, however, as we said previously, I don't know what they'd change. What would you change? I think that it would be... I think a remake might be the worst idea.
Yeah.
I think if you did a sequel which I know that sounds really, really weird for me to say. But I think if you did a sequel or if you did a reimagining where you are um, still going back to the lagoon, still hunting for the gill man, still doing, stuff like this, and not doing a shot for shot remake. Don't do a shot for shot remake. Don't go in there like, oh yeah, this is uh this is gonna revolutionize everything. No, just tell me a story. And like again, Shape of Water, I think would be, if you're going to give me a part four, give me Shape of Water.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to give me a part four, give me Anaconda, but instead of the snake, turn it into the Gill Man. If you've ever seen the Anaconda movie, give me that movie, but it's with the Gill Man instead of the giant snake.
Okay.
Suddenly, this has a whole new, like, that was such a good thing to do. It was so well done. Like, yeah, it's a cheesy B movie monster flick, but so technically is this, and it still holds up really well. Um, they're the you know, give me more of a cat and mouse game between the Gill Man and the humans.
Hmm.
Maybe the Millicent Patrick, the lady who actually designed the creature. The original sketch had him more streamlined. He didn't have the gills. He was more. Honestly, he looked more like an alien, like a gray, like one of the grays, well, in quotation, grays aliens
Mm-hmm.
with the smooth head, and sure, he had the fish eyes and mouth with some tiny gills along the neck. He wasn't necessarily next to the head, but it was down here by the neck. And he still had the webbed hands, webbed hand claw things. Still had the webbed feet like things going on, but he's a lot more streamlined. And they said that if they ever did a female Gilman, then that would be the suit that they would use.
Okay.
Okay, then give me that inversion. Give me a female Gilman. Give me a creature of the Black Lagoon, but the creature now female. Okay, interesting. Or go like the Gorgo, where they've captured her. You say that they've captured her, and they're the whole thing is that they're trying to get out of the Amazon so that they can take her back to the Florida aquariums so they can study her, etc. And the entire time they're getting dogged by the Gill Man. There is actually another Gill Man. It's her mate, and he is trying everything he can to get back to her. And oh, suddenly that's a great. Give me that for a sequel. No wonder the Gill Man is still going on after 3 or 4 times of getting killed off at the end of his movies, because there's more of them. It's just we've only ever found one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Do something like that, or maybe you could even end it like you do Harry and the Hendersons. They release her, she goes into the water, and as soon as she goes into the water, you see from behind the trees other gill men dipping under the water, and you've been thinking you're going out, it's this one gill man this entire time. No, it's multiple gill men. They're all trying to get her back. Do something like that. Do something inventive and creative with it, and I would devour it. It would
Okay.
be such a fun movie. But if you do a shot for shot remake, or the idea of let me do a remake, no, no. I think that's a terrible idea. Treat it like you're going to do a sequel, and I think that it would be a lot better.
Okay, so leave the original alone. Just
Yeah,
create something
yeah.
new.
I think because that's like the new Nosferatu movie that they
Yes.
have coming out. That came out. The 2024 Nosferatu film.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard mixed reviews.
Yeah.
Mixed reviews going okay, and obviously I will not give my thoughts on the film, but this is what I'm getting from secondhand from other people who have seen the film and what the average Joe is saying. The average Joe is saying one of two things. They are saying, it just felt like Dracula. Kind of ironic, um, considering the character history. I'm having some people go, oh man, it was so great. I actually hunted down the original and watched that. It was a shot for shot remake. That's great. Okay, that's an odd thing to say. Um, why would a modern day movie like this be a shot for shot? Why would you use shot for shot stuff like that? especially if the average Joe is saying. There's some people who are saying that it focused too much on the romance and the infatuation that it just felt like Gary Oldman was going to walk in the door at any moment. Talk about the 1990s Dracula film. So uh, there are also people who are going, "Oh man, it was such a good vampire movie. I have been wanting a vampire movie like this for so long that many people are even referencing 30 Days of Night towards it, which I find that very interesting because that hasn't been talked about in years, and I've had people referring to 30 Days of Night again.
Oh, how
Uh,
interesting.
so yeah, exactly. And this is secondhand. These are
Yeah.
people telling me what they thought of the movie. I'll tell you my thoughts on it on another podcast episode. But the the fact that the average Joe is saying this about this movie, I feel like we would have the exact same discussion if it were the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Okay.
It would be, oh yeah, no, it was a shot for shot remake and it was so amazing. And then you're also going to have people going, I saw the original. It was the same thing. I don't think that doing a remake will be the best choice. I think you need to go original, something else original to it. You need to add to the lore, not just remake the lore, if that makes sense.
Which a lot of remakes have actually been doing nowadays, and that's why a lot of them have been getting the doghouse, is because they changed the story on them. Where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, no, you had a good story, you didn't have to change anything, just leave it alone. If you want to do an updated version, make something completely new. And I have to
Yeah.
agree. I have to agree with you, because something like this, when it holds up as well as it has, from the 50s to now, like a couple days away from 2025. Um, when a movie holds up that well for that long, leave it alone. Just don't touch it.
Hmm.
Back the fuck up.
Now, okay, so so let me ask you this: Would you uh, how would you characterize the creature? Is he more villain? Is he more misunderstood? Is he supposed to be a tragic figure? Like, is he some other option that I'm just not thinking of the phrasing for? Like, how would you describe the creature in terms of like what he is?
I'd say a misunderstood tragic figure. I would mix two of those together. And I say that because obviously he's misunderstood. There's a language barrier there, there's a whole species barrier there. Um, and, it's just this creature has been living as it has been for how long, and now suddenly it's being attacked in its own home, and it's unsure what to do. It doesn't know how to properly react, so it does so in violence, as an animal is wont to do. You corner a wolf, you're going to get bit. Um, and I also think that he's a tragic character, because, here he was happily living by himself, uh, and in the end, he's villainized, he's called monster, and ultimately he's hurt. He's killed in his own home.
Yeah, after
Yeah.
getting like how many harpoons to the chest before he finally croaks? I mean, good lord, the man was more
Harpoons,
durable than Superman.
gunshots, hit in the head with a paddle. This guy went through a lot.
Set on fire
Set on
at one
fire.
point.
Yeah, no, he's
Like, yeah,
definitely tragic.
yeah,
And all
no,
he
yeah, I
wanted
agree.
was the loving, tender touch of a woman.
I mean, is that not all what we all desire? Let's be honest. Um, Speaking of the loving touch of a woman, Julia Adams, or Julie Adams, however you want to phrase her, she's not the only thing noteworthy in this film for her acting. She's also noteworthy for her bathing suit. That one piece bathing suit that she's wearing was a custom made job. and it was very risque for the time because uh, it hugged the hip and then came up and gave her that bikini line that it does. This is the 1950s. This is actually before the bikini itself was really popularized, and so she had this one piece pseudo bikini and cut to the lower area of the bathing suit. And boy, did that catch fire! So many people gobbled that thing up. So many people was like, "Oh my!" Another just as many people were going, "Oh my!" About the bathing suit.
I can imagine
So
a lot of
the
angry women, like middle-aged women, uh, going to the store and trying to find this exact bathing suit and then realizing that they can't.
it's a custom job. Sorry. Yeah, no, that was one of the ones. I think the only thing that's made quite the same impact in movie history is Raquel Welch and her fur bikini for 100 million years BC. I think Julie Adams's white one piece and Raquel Welch's fur bikini are the two most iconic swimsuits in all of filmdom.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically enough, both of them involve you know lizards and water. So there you go.
There's got to be something to tie it in, and it's lizards and water.
Apparently so. Apparently, it's scales and skin. That's all you need.
Yep. That's all you need to make a successful movie. Have something with scales and have someone showing skin.
Yeah. Um. Now, okay, all right. As someone who's never seen this film before, but you have seen Universal movies before.
Yes.
Some of the Universal movies before. Um. If you had to pick between Frankenstein, the original Frankenstein, and the original Creature from the Black Lagoon, and you were going to show this to someone who's never seen any of the Universal movies before, which one would you suggest they watch first?
Oh, now
They've never seen these
see.
movies before. Yeah, never seen them before. They want to see if they can get into these movies. Which one would you recommend they watch first?
That's an unfair question because it completely determines about what the audience is. Because I mean, I know people who I would recommend Frankenstein in a heartbeat, but I also know people who I'd recommend Creature of the Black Lagoon in a heartbeat. It all depends on the subtext. Now, subtext being that Creature of the Black Lagoon is very much Shape of Water esque, or well, vice versa, where creature from the water falls in love with human girl. Now, in this day and age, Shape of Water got a lot of talk because of that, and so I would not recommend it to certain parties. Um, but it makes it a difficult choice because they're both good movies. It just depends on the audience that you're showing it to.
Okay, okay, I can understand that. I can understand that. Then, what if I said, Anita, I've never seen a Universal movie before. I like I like myself a nice gothic horror, but I also really enjoy a good sci-fi 50s style movie. But I've never seen either of the any of the Universal movies. Um, where do you recommend I start? What would you be your response to that?
Well, my first response would be, "Wow, Sir Cophagus, you're older than dirt, and the fact that you still haven't seen these movies is shocking." But um, gothic horror, sci-fi, definitely Frankenstein.
Okay.
That is the
So you still
epitome.
lean towards Frankenstein.
That is the epitome of gothic horror for me. It's Frankenstein. You have Mary
Okay.
Shelley, who is the birth mother of gothic horror. Like her Frankenstein has blown up over the years as such a wonderful masterpiece of literature, to the point that there have been a movie made. I think several movies made based on her book. So So yeah, if you're looking for a fucking good gothic horror, it's definitely Frankenstein.
Okay. All right. Well, then, hell yeah. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Now that's not saying
Now,
that I would not recommend Creature of the Black Lagoon to other people who are not looking for the more gothic of the horror-esque movies. Creature of the Black Lagoon is its own thing, you know, like if you're wanting, say, hey, I really like Jaws and I want more creatures in the water type of thing. Well, I'd have a movie for you. It's just like, again, it depends on your audience. It depends on what they're looking
that's fair.
for, what they're into.
That's fair. That's
It's a
completely
whole
fair.
mathematic equation that I have to do in my head.
No, no, I understand. And it was kind of a gotcha question just because I've had that same thing asked to me, and I have to go through and play 20 questions in my head going, well, what is this person like? What are their interests? Are they more geared toward this? Are they more geared toward that? So I completely understand when you say that that's kind of a loaded question because it's true. It's an unfair question, but I think you answered it pretty well. Ultimately, Frankenstein, but that's just with limited information. So
Yeah.
I can understand. I can respect.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
I mean, it just both movies. Like again, I grew up on Frankenstein. Frankenstein was my OG Universal monster movie.
mhm.
So that's always going to have a special place in my heart. This, on the other hand, I am kicking myself for not watching it sooner.
And you actually have the box set now, right?
I do,
Of the
yeah,
original monsters.
yeah.
That's awesome. I highly recommend. I don't recommend you do it now because it does talk about the other films, and I kind of want to leave you in the dark as I can with this. But I do recommend you watch Back to the Black Lagoon, which is a documentary on the box set that actually talks. It's kind of like it's like a 40-minute long documentary. Uh, but actually it has interviews from the cast and crew, and they talk about the movie and whatnot. And I highly recommend it, but I also want you to shy away from it for now until we've at least seen Revenge of the Creature, and then after that, by all means, because you're past the halfway point. But uh, starting off, try and I definitely recommend it. It's a nice little documentary, and it's very heartfelt. I feel a little sappy in some cases, but that's also just because the actors and actresses and whatnot are all waxing nostalgically over working on the picture, and so you kind of get like a firsthand feel of how it was whenever they were on set. But yeah, yeah, definitely a good one. Definitely a good one. Now, what about? We said it was multifaceted. What about the pollution angle? Did you get a pollution angle off of this movie?
I definitely did. I know you mentioned before that some groups of people had been using this movie as more or less an ad campaign to be like, hey, don't pollute. And I can see where that's coming from in a very small dose kind of way. I mean, there's only one scene in particular, three scenes, but very small scenes. Shut up.
Number
Very
keeps getting
small
bigger.
scenes of them throwing this. Now, it's a natural drug. It's a root. They explain this in the movie. It's a root that the natives of the Amazon dig up and powder, and basically they throw it in the water and it paralyzes the fish. It doesn't kill them, it paralyzes them. Basically makes them a bit sleepy, and then they float to the top, so they're easier to catch. I definitely can see where that can be used as your ad campaign against pollution because, well, you know, it's not the best way to do your fishing. Especially because we don't even know what the fuck they were throwing in the water in the movie. It could have been anything. You know, I highly doubt it's what they were portraying it to be.
Yeah,
And
it's just chalk. It's just a lot of chalk powder they had from all the blackboard.
chalk or compressed flour, whatever it was, it definitely was not a natural ingredient to be thrown into water.
Hmm.
And that, I think, is a good thing to be like, hey, like, you see them throwing this shit in the water, and then suddenly it pans down to the creature, and he's looking up at them like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm gonna fucking kill you for this now. Like, he doesn't. I'm basically getting at, the creature doesn't really get aggressive until things start happening to his home and to himself. And that's definitely
Yeah,
very much like, I can see people taking that and be like, oh, don't pollute, because otherwise, you're killing natural habitats and shit like that, which I can get behind. Definitely pick up your trash and everything like that. Is this movie an anti-pollution campaign? No.
no, no, definitely not. I'll agree with you there. One of the scenes that first made me go, I can see what you're driving at. Um, Kay, our leading lady, she's smoking her cigarette. She flicks the cigarette into the water and it hits and the ripples, and then it pans underneath the water and the creature is watching her, is looking up and watching her. And the very next scene is that all the fish are paralyzed and floating up to the top of the water. And it's actually a really cool little bit of subtext if you go the anti pollution route.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's, hey, look, you just polluted. What we as audiences have been seeing is this beautiful, crystal clear water, and oh, wow, look at all the fish, and da 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 da. And then she throws her cigarette butt in the 1950s, which wouldn't have batted anybody's eye. So it's just kind of like, oh, yeah, this happens all the time. And then the very next scene is all these not dead fish, but you get the distinct implication that the cigarette butt just killed all the fish.
Well, and
Oh.
and that's the thing too. Like, it's another thing about leaving untouched land untouched. Um, Nothing bad happened until the humans showed up and started, you know, doing their shit. And you could use that as well as an angle for that. Like, if you just leave well enough alone, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine with you interrupting every single living thing in there. Um,
Mhm.
it's just it's just how it be.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's I understand where they're coming from on it. I don't necessarily overtly agree, but it's that bit of subtlety. It's that bit of subtext that's
Mm-hmm.
there. It's in the back of your mind, but it never really comes to a full boil, but it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be something that you're thinking about later and you're going, oh, how about that?
Yeah.
And leave it at that. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Done. But
It it just takes
there's
it
a
just takes
few
one little
scenes like that.
niggling thought in the back of your mind. That's all it takes.
Mhm, mhm. That's all you need. Done. Easy peasy. Done.
Yeah,
100%.
pretty much.
So there you go. There you go. Okay. 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 Awesome. Awesome. Now let me see. How do I want to phrase this question? Because I have another question for you. Um, do you think that this film uh is um a bit of a uh hidden gem in the crown of the Universal monsters? Because you always hear somebody talk about the Wolfman and Frankenstein and Dracula and the Invisible Man sometimes, but the most often it's the Mummy, things like that. They don't ever really talk about the creature. Do you think that the creature of Black Lagoon, he is obviously part of like the big monolithic box set franchise? Do you think that he kind of the headed stepchild of the Universal movies?
I think a couple of them are kind of like the hidden gems, because you definitely don't hear anybody talking about the Phantom of the Opera. You don't hear anyone talking
Yeah.
about the Creature of the Black Lagoon. It's the ones that made the bigger splash later on in years, like Dracula, with the 1990s, Gary Oldman, and then The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, and all these remakes of movies that not necessarily are word for word, scene for scene kind of thing, but they're definitely odes to the originals. Um,
Hmm.
Whereas Creature of the Black Lagoon, you don't have that. Phantom of the Opera, obviously you do, but nobody talks about the original. They talk about the musical or one of the other adaptations um, that was done, and even then, that's rare. It's usually the musical. Um, I think Creature of the Black Lagoon is one of those hidden gems where it's just it had its time in the 50s, but then sadly was lost as the others started pushing their way through into the 80s and the 90s and then the 2000s and so on and so forth. We have how many iterations of vampire movies and mummy movies and things like that. It's just one of those things that unfortunately happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I can understand that.
and honestly, like, this is part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast, because there's so many hidden gems out there that you just do not hear about because nobody knows about them. You hear nothing about them anymore. And being able to shed light onto such movies and hopefully getting some traction for these things gets the word out there, gets more views on these movies. It's just,
Yeah, look, all we can do is hope, and
yeah.
this is our 2 cents. Take it with a grain of salt. Although just from your impassioned plea, I'm already suspecting that next year we're going to do like a Phantom of the Opera theme. It's just going to be, oh yeah,
Could
here's the Lon
we?
Chaney one.
Could
You
we?
know, a few a few episodes later, oh yeah, here's the Claude Rains version, and then a few episodes later, oh, here's the Robert Englund version. It's like, what the heck is going on? And
Well, and
then
then you have the
then we do
Charles
the
Dance
musical.
version, and then you have, like you said, the Robert England, and there's
Yeah,
so
we could
many
do.
different iterations
We
of this movie, and you don't find them anymore because nobody talks about them. There was no traction for them. The only reason the musical got the traction was because it was done by Andrew Lloyd Webber, who is a fantastic musical writer. He did Cats and all that.
Mhm.
Um, so
Well, and
it's
until he's a great musical director until he decides to write his own fan fiction, and then there's the Phantom of Coney Island that we don't talk about.
Yeah, you were really upset about that movie.
I really am. You have the audience listening has no idea how much of a burr under my saddle that movie is. I'm sorry, that musical is. That is a hard no from me, dog. Like
just so
no,
everyone
no.
knows, I know it's off topic, but Andrew Lloyd Webber wrote a sequel to Phantom of the Opera called Love Never Dies, and boy howdy. Anyways, back
It's
on track.
oof, it's rough, man. It's rough. But
But
yeah, no. So like, there's obviously there are a few hidden gems, and I would love to. That's and kind of like what you said. I would love to shed more light on them. Universal has the Mad Ghoul. We have obviously we have the Sherlock Holmes films, which not a lot of people remember is Universal. In fact, there is a theory that Sherlock Holmes is canon to the Universal Monster movieverse.
I can see it.
And as we progress in our viewings, I will slow roll this theory out. But basically, specifically the lesser known horror films, they all have like there's a because they all had to share a budget or they had to share sets or they had to share crew or stuff, things of that nature. There is um, there's a way that you can like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, all of the Sherlock Holmes movies that Universal did, into the Monster Rally Universal umbrella.
Hmm.
which is flipping fascinating whenever you think about it. But yeah, no, sure enough, there is technically a way you can connect them all together, um, and nobody knows, so no one talks, and so etc. But I would love to talk about more of this kind of stuff. That's like you said, that's kind of like why I agreed to get on the podcast and join you on this little venture. This year, let me see. I not to sound like I'm trying to rush us or anything, but how much longer do we have on this episode?
Oh, we're at an hour 22.
How much longer?
We're at an hour 22 already.
We're at an hour 22. Okay.
We've been
So wow,
going.
I didn't realize we had. Yeah, well, hey, it's fine, it's fine.
Time flies when you're having
It
fun.
is. It does. It does. Well, we won't stretch it for too much longer. Still, it is fun to talk about some good ones, and it's also really fun to talk about bad movies. But the theme this year is underwater menace. We're going to be doing predominantly films. We're going to talk about films that involve the water in some form or fashion, whether it's a film where it's a dark and stormy night, so it's raining and pouring outside. It could be Creature in the Black Lagoon, where there's oh hey, there's something here. Maybe we'll do Jaws. Maybe we'll do one of the Jaws bootlegs. Maybe we'll do um, Frankenfish or oh shoot, what was one of the other ones you recommended to me?
Oh, there were so
Um,
many.
it was oh yeah, no, there so was Chupacabra Terror. Like what? What do you mean Chupacabra Terror? What does that have to do with the water? And you're like, trust me, just trust me. And I'm going, oh no, oh Lord, so like this whole year of the whole year of 2025, we're going to be very wet with our podcast,
Oh
and that
my.
sounds vaguely lewd, but it's not intended to be.
Take me out to dinner
But
first.
um, but that's what we're going to do this podcast this year. So the 2025 year, we're going to go and we're going to get we're going to delve into the weeds and find some of the weirdest, the wildest, and the most bizarre um, feature films
Hmm.
that happen to have some sort of aquatic aesthetic. And I'll let you know now, Anita, we dodged a bullet for the moment. It depends on how bad you decide to abuse me during these watch tours. There is
Well,
a no, you don't understand. I found a Mexican creature from the Black Lagoon Western film. It is a Western that involves the creature that involves a creature from the Black Lagoon esque monster as its main antagonist.
and we didn't watch that
Um,
one because.
you're lucky that we're not watching it because it is terrible. And if you abuse me too much with your horrible recommendations, then my vengeance will know no bounds, and you will watch it and you will suffer.
Now
So
that
just
being
just
said,
just be aware.
that being said, our the way we're going to be doing this is basically we're going to do an old film and a new film. So Mr.
Yes,
Sarcophagus
yes.
here is predominantly
It's
the.
just sarcophagus, not Mr. Sarcophagus. That sounds like sarcophagus is the full name. It's sarcophagus. Sarcophagus. Yes, you know. Let's don't abuse my name.
Mr. Rags for Clothes
Rar.
here. Is predominantly from, what did we say, the 1990s back, and I'm going to be doing movies
Yeah,
from the
pretty much.
2000s up.
1990s is a bit of a gray area for me. There are many films I have seen from that era, but there's just as many that I have not. Uh, I will mark 1989 as my focal point.
Okay.
Anything 1989 backwards, I have seen, I know a lot about, I think is fantastic, and I challenge you to watch them all with us. Whereas the lovely Miss Anita Dirtnap is more of a new age gal. She's seen a lot of the films from the 90s, but there's some that she hasn't. And then she's seen a lot of the ones from the 2000s straight on up until concurrent time.
Mm-hmm.
So she's going to try and find some really good ones, and she's going to try and find some really bad ones. And I'm going to find some really good ones, like today's movie. And then I'm also going to find some really bad ones. And and of course, obviously, I said that we're gonna predominantly stay with a wet theme, an aquatic byline, but we're not going to focus 1,000% on that. Like there's going to be a couple of movies that we're we need to dry off for a minute,
Yeah.
and so we'll go and what's one of the movies that we have on our itinerary? There's the Slender Man movie. There's that Slender Man movie that you want us to watch. And I have a couple of Bela Lugosi films that I can throw at us, or you know, you get the idea. You get the
Yeah.
gist. You get the gist.
Basically, we're
So,
going to do an old movie, new movie, old movie, new movie, and we're going to keep that going until we run out of movies. Um,
yes,
so,
and if that happens, if it takes too long, then I'll be dead in the ground again.
I
Um,
mean, I mean,
Well, I tell you what. Why don't the people at home, if they decide that they like our content, they're more than welcome to support us. And if we get enough support, then we can actually do this gig full time, and we'll buzz through all the movies as fast as we can.
and then we'll be
Um,
without a job again.
hey, maybe you will. I'll find more employment elsewhere. I'll join another podcast if I have to.
Wow, wow, no loyalty. Yeah, so let us know what you think. If there's things we could tweak, if there's things that you would want to see in future episodes, are there movies that you know of that you think that we might enjoy? Um, Things like that. Let's get the community talking early on here. We've got some social medias. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a Twitter. We have a Bluesky. All under the
We have pretty much. If it's a social media related thingamabob, we're gonna have one.
yeah,
um, Regardless. Even the unloved apps will eventually have us on there somewhere.
yeah,
You just got to be patient, but it'll crop up.
yeah.
Now, before we jump too far on our own self promotion, Anita, darling, what would you rate the creature from the Black Lagoon?
Well, giving this a scale of 1 to 5 here, I would definitely rate this a. Ooh, see, here's the thing. I don't ever want to give a movie a full 5-star score, because there's always going to be flaws. There's always going to be something that somebody, is a drawback for them. And
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think I can fairly say I can give this a 4.5. I can give this an
Really?
almost perfect score. There's some instances that were a little bit of a drawback for me, but they weren't major. They weren't like
Was it the blaring trumpet?
the blaring trumpet every time the creature came on screen. Was definitely one of them.
Yeah. Okay. I can agree. I can agree. Sometimes the musical arrangement was a little much. It would blare it at you, and it was almost a pseudo jump scare in that regard. Because of just it was you know, and it would just like you could almost see the trumpets just going ham with some of this every time. So I can get behind that.
Now I turn the question to you. What would
I
you rate this?
oh well, let me think. Let me think. If I had to, judge on a scale of 5 tombstones to 1, um, I think I would actually have to agree with you. This is as close to a perfect movie for me as possible.
Hmm.
In view of specifically of classics of the classic era, this is probably the best, like definitively this is the best 1950s sci-fi horror film of all time. So
Hmm.
if you're going to go the entire 1950s decade, I think that this is the best 5 out of 5. If you're going to compare that to films in general, uh, I'd knock it down only half a skull. So 4.5 tombstones out of that would be my marking on that. Um, just because there are a few things that are pseudo laughable, but it never gives you enough time to dwell on it.
Hmm.
Like some you know the kind of movie where they'll do something that's absolutely insane laughable and they spend just a frame too long on it that you actually start to get the chuckles
Yes.
or you start to roll your eyes.
Yeah.
And this film is edited in such a way that as soon as something like that happens, it's already all over to the next scene, and you're following them again, and so you don't have time to really go oh ha ha about blah blah blah. It's done. It's over with. It's on to the next thing. So yeah, I think if we were comparing specifically to the 1950s films, this is the perfect 5. If we're comparing of all time, knock it half a tombstone, 4.5.
I can agree. Yeah. I mean,
That
it's
is
very hard to find a
that's
perfect
where I'd
movie out
go.
there.
No, yeah, this is true, and I think that there are perfect movies, but uh, this, in the spirit of fairness, I can't say that this is a perfect one. This is oof. I got some good ones. This is up there. This is definitely up there. And I think the nice thing about the creature films is that, as you will see, and as our listeners will see, with our ratings, the creature films are one of the few consistently good films of the Universal era.
All
So
right.
I'll go with that. I'll
Well
go with
then,
that. Um,
shall we wrap up?
one final trivia note, actually, that I actually completely forgot to bring up. This film was originally shot in 3D.
Eh?
It was originally shot in 3D, and they what they would do, yeah, yeah, no, no,
Well,
it's hilarious to think about. But 1950s was the 1920s was the first 3D craze. Think about that for more than 2 seconds. The
wow.
1920s was the first 3D craze.
Wow. Really?
Yes.
Oh my god. I
And then we had the 30s, the 40s, and then it came back in the 50s. So in the 1950s, we had the return of the 3D movie. And this was actually the very first film to ever be shot in 3D of the 1950s era. And so what they would do is they would film, it was two cameras filmed side by side that were just slightly off of each other. And when you put on the glasses, you would see everything filmed on from one side on one in one eye, everything filmed on the other side from the other eye. And because the cameras were filmed just off center from each other, it created this illusion that you are seeing them as more of a three-dimensional image. And they would pop out of the screen. And it was actually very well done, except you had to have a film operator who knew what the heck they were doing. And one of the reasons why 3D died in the 50s is because the film operators in the movie theaters they were not properly trained, they did not understand, and so the timing would be off. And instead of watching this film in tandem exactly how it's supposed to be, you would have one eye watching that was synced with the audio, and then the other eye that was a frame or two off.
Oh,
And so you wound up having this really weird double exposure thing going on where it
how
would actually make a lot of people nauseous. And that's actually where the legend of 3D is actually really bad for your eyes came from.
how weird.
Yeah. And here's the really cool part. Let's continue this fad just a little bit more. So the 1920s was the first 3D fad. Then we had it in the 50s, so 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, so 30 years later. And then and then we had the 60s, and then the 70s, which kind of had a bit of a 3D thing, but not really. But then the 80s, oh wow, another 30 years later, a lot of 3D movies, Friday the 13th in 3D, all this other kind of stuff in 3D. 3D was a big thing again. Every time you think of the 3D, people sitting in to watch a 3D movie, you'll either think of the 50s, the 80s, or the two, and then you go 90s, 2000s, 2010s. Oh, 2010s. What should happen in the 2010s? Avatar, Alice in Wonderland, etc. All of a sudden, we have all these other 3D movies. Every 30 years, we try for another 3D film craze.
That just reminded me that they used to sell 3D TVs back then.
Yep. In fact, there are still people who actually have them, use them, and there are still content creators out there making them for them. It's kind of flipping hilarious.
Wow. That's insane.
But
That's
yeah,
some good
Apple TV
trivia.
was notorious for it. But yeah, so there you go. There's your final fun film fact for the podcast is every 30 years. So we just had the 2010s, now we're in the 2020s. So we gotta go 20s, 30s, 40s. So 2040 is going to be the next 3D craze.
You heard it
Check it on
here,
your calendars,
folks.
folks.
You heard it here, folks. You heard it here first, folks. There we go. Jesus Christ. I had a stroke. Um, place your bets. If it doesn't come until the 40s, you can come find Sir Cophagus and beat his ass up.
Well, I'll sign an autograph free of charge. You'll get one.
Wow. All right. So, with that, shall we final statement this?
Watch the movie. Everyone, watch this movie. It's a fantastic movie. We love this movie. I think everybody needs to. I think that everyone needs to watch The Creature from the Black Lagoon. I highly recommend it. Again, the best sci-fi adventure horror film combo of the 1950s. If you have any inclination to watch it, do yourself a favor and watch it. That is my final thought on The Creature from the Black Lagoon. What about
Hi-
you, Anita?
Highly agree. Highly agree. Um, if you've never watched it, go find it. It's on YouTube. It's you can buy. You can still buy the DVD of it. I'm pretty sure. Like I mean, you get the Universal box set, which comes with all the monster movies that Universal did. Go find
Mm-hmm.
it, watch it, have fun. If you've already seen it, go watch it, find it, have fun.
Too true, too true.
Too true.
Uh, well, if that's the case, then that is a wrap for this episode of the Coffin Table podcast. If you've enjoyed our deep dive into the dark, be sure to rate, review, and share.
Got a film for us to unearth? Let us know. Follow us on social media for more chills and thrills.
And until next time, stay spooky and don't look under the bed.